Alright, so you're a big tech corporation, right? You got all this money and all these resources to do whatever you want. But this brand new market of video games comes around. You gotta get in on that. You have tons of engineers. Surely they can figure out some way to capitalize on it. Video games are just code at the end of the day. You have lots of experience with that. So you venture out into the charted waters of gaming. And it failed. This is a lot more common than you'd expect. Let's start with the obvious. Google. More specifically, Stadia. A failure so infamous that I don't even need to explain to you what this even is. But for those living under a rock, it was a cloud gaming service by Google, and you had to buy the games you wanted to play on it, often for full price, and there was no way to download them. You also had to pay a subscription fee if you wanted to play games higher than 1080p. And while this did give you extra games in your library, this was Stadia. That was not a benefit. Now, I do have to give Google some amount of credit. They saw how hard it is to break into the console market and went in a different direction. They tried offering a service that no one else was providing. It's just that in practice, Stadia was a service that no one wanted. Why spend extra money on games you probably already bought when there was no guarantee you would even have access to it in a few years? Even if the play experience was perfect, which it wasn't for most people. Stadia didn't offer anything worth investing in. It's not hard to see why it only lasted 3 years. To satisfy the insane people watching, you could say the Stadia was ahead of its time. Cloud gaming still has the potential to be huge in the future, as depressing as that sounds. But when you break it down, it just didn't make much sense why players and even developers would invest their time and money into this thing. Because the fact of the matter is that if you bought a game on Stadia, it just isn't guaranteed to be a good experience. The recommended bandwidth for 1080p 60 FPS was 20 megabits per second. In 2020, that was a bit much, at least to most people. 720p was more reasonable at 10 megabits per second, but at that point, the game's probably gonna look so grainy and gross, you're better off just playing your Switch instead. Because there's no way you're playing this on your phone on the go. Most people have limited mobile data in the US. This thing is gonna eat up your monthly limits fast. And if you're at home, you're probably better off just playing one of your consoles. You could argue that this kind of service is made for people that want to get into console games but don't have a console. But those kinds of people probably didn't have good enough internet to use it. And the people who did have good enough internet to use it could probably just buy a Switch instead. The games on Stadia didn't really appeal to the casual market, and the people who like AAA games already own a decent console or PC. So Stadia was mainly made for people who had insanely good internet and wanted to get into console games, but didn't have a console. A market so small that it isn't a viable business strategy. And the poor suckers who actually paid for Stadia Pro didn't even get what they paid for. Destiny 2 only ran at 1080p, and Red Dead Redemption 2 only ran at 1440p. And Red Dead wasn't even 60 FPS. Even if those are outliers, that's obviously not the 4K 60 FPS people paid for. It was barely even better than what you get out of a PS4 Pro. There isn't even an obvious benefit at that point. But let's at least look at it from the developer's perspective. Everyone playing the game is going to be playing in the same version, so it's at least less likely players are going to run into bugs and errors, I guess. But at least you could just plop existing PC games onto this thing, right? No! Because Stadia ran on this weird-ass version of Linux, games had to be specifically ported to Stadia in order to work. And this was before the days where Proton just worked, so they couldn't even rely on that. So you go through all this effort just to put your game on Stadia, and then very few people bought it because it was on Stadia. A lot of developers also weren't treated very well, and they had terrible support. Like how Terraria's developer got locked out of his Google account for no clear reason, and it took a month of complaining to Google to unlock it. For Terraria, one of the best-selling games of all time. Imagine you're some small developer without many connections, just trying to get your game out there, and Google just tells you no, without any explanation. I wouldn't be surprised if this happened to way more indies than just Relogic. And like, why would you even buy Terraria on a platform like this? That game runs on any computer and only takes up around 700 megabytes. It would only take a few minutes to use more bandwidth than just downloading and playing it normally. And looking at the games that are available on this thing, there are quite a few games like that. Like, who in their right mind would want to play Doom 64 or Enter the Gungeon or Celeste like this? There aren't any hard numbers about how many copies games sold on Stadia, but since they never said specifics, it was obviously bad, which led to the end of Stadia. Just a random announcement one day that no one was surprised about. Most people got refunds of the games they bought, some publishers were willing to transfer their purchases to other launchers, and that was the end of that. This shutdown didn't really get much fanfare because so few people used it in the first place. For a video like this, I would have loved to try this thing out for science, but with how cloud gaming works, I can't use Stadia anymore. Even back in the day, I think I only tried out Destiny 2 for like 10 minutes out of morbid curiosity. I didn't really play anything on here. This whole thing just presents a very scary situation. Out of the 6 Stadia exclusives, only half of them got ported to other platforms. Now, one of those lost games was just a Snake clone made by Google to test out Stadia's features, and another was a Battle Royale game that no one played, and none of them had good Metacritic scores. But there's still games that you can't play anymore. Pixel Junk Raiders is a game that you can't play anymore. Video game preservation is already a problem, and an all-cloud future is the absolute worst-case scenario for that. With the way cloud gaming works, you're essentially just playing a video stream. The code isn't being run on your machine. There's no way to see the actual game files other than what's being presented to you. It's like playing a YouTube video. At least with other games, as long as you have access to the game files, you can theoretically figure out some way to make it work. You can't do that with a cloud-only game. For all intents and purposes, the game is just locked away in a vault somewhere, and we're only allowed to see it in the way that Google deems it acceptable. There's no magic involved in cloud computing. The cloud is just someone else's computer. It's not yours. Cloud gaming is the end game for publishers. They have total control over everything, which makes it so you can only play the game in the way they want you to. No mods, no personal backups. You can't even pirate it in protest because we never really had access to it in the first place. Who cares about never having to download updates of the 2 games where it's actually annoying when they can just revoke your access to it whenever they want? It's the worst possible timeline for consumers. Luckily, with the Stop Killing Games movement on the rise, people clearly don't like it when you take away things they paid for. Who knows if this kind of thing will have any kind of legal impact on gaming, but hopefully it at least scares major publishers into giving offline modes to more online-only games, before it becomes a legal problem for them. So if there's any bright side to Stadia's failure, it's that people continue to reject cloud gaming, unless it's a bonus feature for Game Pass or something, and even then I question if people even use it. Stadia was such a massive failure that Google never tried doing anything even remotely related to console gaming again. Hopefully it stays that way. From do no evil to, let's do evil. Time to talk about Amazon. Now, for the average person who just knows Amazon as an online retailer, you'd be surprised how ingrained into tech they are. Their store is just a side gig. Amazon Web Services is where the real moneymaker is. It's so popular that every time there's an outage, it makes headlines because of how many online services stop working. Is it a good thing that most of the internet is hosted by the same company? No, but that's a completely different topic. As for their gaming products, they've actually made a surprising number of attempts. From Lumberyard to Luna to Amazon Games, there's a lot to talk about from them. And if you haven't heard of any of these, that's exactly why I'm here today. We just got done talking about Stadia, so let's start off with talking about Amazon's attempt at it. Luna. If that name sounds familiar, it might be from the Discover Luna button on Twitch that no person has ever willingly clicked on, which is probably why they removed it. Unlike Stadia, Luna is still in service, and it also uses Windows servers instead of Linux ones, so developers don't need to do much to bring existing PC games over to it as far as I know. And to be honest, I had a hard time finding any information about Luna, aside from the usual marketing stuff. So I guess I have no other choice than to just use it myself, you know, for science. The initial experience was a lot better than I was expecting. I logged into my Amazon account, linked up my GOG account, and I was good to go. Setting up the controller was stupidly easy. I just plugged in my PS5 controller and it already worked. I can even navigate all the menus with it. If you're feeling a bit more deranged, you can buy a controller specifically for Luna. Basically, instead of sending the inputs through your device to their servers and then back to your device, they cut out the middleman and sends the inputs directly through the internet. Stadia had a controller like this too, but unlike Stadia, the Luna controller also works through Bluetooth out of the box. No having to go through any extra steps to actually use the device you paid for. And as a quick aside, you won't be able to switch Stadia controllers over to Bluetooth mode after 2025. So if you still have one of those lying around, be sure to do that as soon as possible. I'm sure there's some other way to switch to Bluetooth mode, but this is probably easier. This thing is just e-waste otherwise. The Luna controller is apparently actually pretty good, but it's $70 for some reason, so that's gonna be a no thanks for me. It's supposed to reduce input lag, but from what I played on Luna, I doubt it really makes much of a difference. You're better off just using one of the controllers you probably already have. So after about 5 minutes of setup, this is what my game library ended up being. Gaming. You can actually import your GOG, EA, and Ubisoft libraries, so you don't have to rebuy any eligible games. That is a massive step up from Stadia, that's for damn sure. The only problem is that this requires either an Amazon Prime or a Luna Plus subscription. Yeah, you have to pay to play games you already bought. Aside from how completely stupid that is, those subscriptions at least give you a rotating library of free games to play, several of which being games I already have on other launchers, but still. So let's finally get into how these games play. I naturally went for Garfield Lasagna Party, which is clearly peak. I was kind of surprised at how well everything functioned at first. The picture quality was fine. I didn't notice any unplayable amount of lag. I could even play this toast driving minigame just fine. It only took about 5 minutes before this thing started becoming a stuttery, grainy mess. There were even plenty of frame skips, which definitely ruined my competitive Lasagna Party performance. Okay, enough messing around. Let's play an actual video game. I decided to play Fallout New Vegas, and I accidentally played it for an hour because I was actually having fun, even if it obviously wasn't a great experience. The stutter in this game is normal, but this is a different kind of stutter. It almost felt like it was a Discord stream that was lagging out. I couldn't really tell if the game was actually 60 FPS or not. Like, it just wasn't a smooth frame rate. All the stuttering in the footage is not a problem with the capture. The game just looked like that. But weirdly enough, I just kind of got used to it. I was having a shockingly enjoyable time. I named myself Sans Undertale. I had a laughably lopsided build where I invested all my special points in strength and luck. So I just went and mowed everything with a machete to start with. Killed this guy just for fun. I instantly antagonized the powder gangers because they're terrorists. I even walked through Deathclaw territory and went right to New Vegas. Never did that before. If push came to shove and I had to play the game like this, I'd probably still love it. The input lag was fine. The game looked good enough, even if it was a little JPEG-y. This was an honest to God a good time. But I was also having fun playing this at 20 FPS on a crappy HP Pavilion from 2010. Now, the game is obviously running better than that, but a fun game is still a fun game. It doesn't really matter how you play it for the most part. Playing New Vegas like this kind of reminded me of the days where I didn't care if the game was at least 60 FPS pristine resolutions. I was happy just being able to play the game at 720p in a somewhat playable state. Now, does that mean I recommend you play the game like this? Not really. It just kind of reminded me of how I played this game when I was like 15. And I don't know if that's a compliment or not. Fortnite keeps being pushed as a game to play on here, so let's check that out. I mean, it's pretty much the same story as before. Looks bad, but I can at least play it just fine. After 2 games, I managed to get 6th place, so I definitely say that it's a good experience. But I just can't help but wonder why I'd want to play the game like this over any other method. Now, I'm sure some kid with a Prime subscription and a dream will play the game like this for hundreds of hours. But this game runs on anything. Your phone, your Switch, your high-end gaming PC, whatever. You can put it into a high-performance mode and play it on a potato or crank up the graphics, making even the best computer scream in agony. It's one of the reasons why Fortnite is so popular. There's barely any barrier to entry. Luna seems like the last possible option anyone would consider. Even after experiencing cloud gaming for myself, I have a hard time figuring out who the target audience is. It's not like consoles are that expensive, especially if you get a used Switch or PS4. The whole time I was playing this, I just wasn't impressed. The input lag on Fortnite was fine, but the picture quality was so grainy that it was hard to make out where other players are, which in a game like this is really important. I had to manually change the upscaling from TSR to XCSS just to make it tolerable. And all of this is under the best case scenario where my PC is plugged directly into the modem. I then proceeded to download the 75GB game that is Fortnite in about 25 minutes. My internet is not the problem. This is more or less the best case scenario for me, and it was just fine. I played the game natively just for comparison's sake, and I obviously noticed a difference immediately. Being able to play the game at 1440p, 120 FPS is obviously a better experience. I don't even need to show you a side-by-side comparison, it just looks better. It doesn't make me better at the game, though. I had a hilariously bad lose streak, and I finally gave up after getting killed by some guy with a skibbity toilet skin. Fortnite is a real video game. I figured I would see how much better Fallout New Vegas looked on my own hardware, so I went to download my save file from when I played on Luna, and it wasn't there. This just happened to be a game that didn't support this feature. I was having fun, and they somehow figured out a way to ruin it, which means I'm not investing any more of my time into playing this. I still had another save file for comparison's sake, but it wasn't the same. I couldn't make it through Deathclaw territory because I'm bad at video games. It looks and plays better, water is wet, you get the idea. While I only played 3 games from this thing, Luna's library is just bizarre. There's plenty of good stuff to play. Luna definitely has a better library than Stadia ever did. And you can even import your games from GOG, EA, and Ubisoft, so you don't have to buy games specifically for Luna. That already fixes Stadia's biggest flaw. If I buy the game on the other launchers, I still keep the game even in a worst case scenario. There's even plenty more Luna games if you're willing to buy them. But I'm hesitant to buy anything that isn't in the GOG section for obvious reasons. And the games that do qualify from GOG are mostly indie games that run on basically anything. I have limited mobile data. I'm not playing a game on Luna when I can just play my Switch instead. The third best-selling console of all time. Everyone has one of these things, which is a massive problem when you're trying to appeal to people who don't have one. Luna's definitely going in a different direction than Stadia and appealing to people who already have PC games. But the problem with that approach is that people mostly only have games on Steam, and people like me who do have GOG games can't access most of their GOG library anyway. And it's also really inconsistent. Like, I have Bug Fables and Shantae and the Pirate's Curse on GOG, but I can't play them on here because who knows? Like, dude, they have The Witcher 1, but not 3, or Cyberpunk. Something that could benefit people that don't have a good enough PC to play it. Like, some of the big games they're plastering on here are stuff like Cuphead, and Hollow Knight, and Stardew Valley. Games that run on anything. Why would I buy Sonic Mania on Luna when there's a decompilation that runs on mobile natively? They got this game working on a new 3DS, for God's sake. Okay, that's a bad example. Most people aren't gonna do that. But the game's on Switch, just play it on there. You're just complaining about not being able to get stuff for free. Well, yeah. Look, I mainly just did my best to try this thing out for free as much as I could. I'm not investing actual money into this thing. I already told you what happened to Stadia. If nothing else, Luna is a better investment overall since it mostly uses games you already bought on other launchers. It's just hard to recommend to people because it has the same problems as Stadia. Why use cloud gaming when you can buy a used Switch for like $200? Maybe you can use this on less powerful PCs for people that nabbed a bunch of GOG freebies over the years, but that's the only use case I can think of. And that's definitely not making Amazon any decent amount of money. Although, credit where credit is due, despite how much I've been making fun of this thing, Luna is basically Stadia done right. And it still sucks. But yeah, this is a service not made for someone like me. I obviously wouldn't see the appeal in it. I have a Radeon 7700 XT in my computer. It's definitely not the best GPU money can buy or anything, but I can play most games at least 1440p 60 FPS. Older games can easily hit at least 120 FPS. Even when you have to deal with AI upscalers just to make the game look like it's supposed to, the image quality is miles better than whatever Luna can provide. While it is pretty obvious that someone like me doesn't benefit much from a service like this, someone like me can also take advantage of a feature built right into Steam: remote play. Yeah, it turns out that you can stream games off your own machine to another device in the same network, and it works insanely well, and it's free! Like, there's a drop frame here and there, but it's nowhere near a problem. I can't even tell this is a video stream. It looks about as good as it possibly could on my 10-year-old laptop, and the input latency is so low that I can play a game like Guilty Gear no problem. Like, if I can play a fighting game like this without any issues, I can play any game through remote play and have a good time. It's crazy to me that this is a feature that they barely advertise. It's been a way better experience than Luna ever was. I don't really have much use for this personally, but if I had a Steam Deck, this would be overpowered. If I wanted to play a game that Steam Deck couldn't handle, I could just run it on my desktop PC instead. This isn't even the only service like this. There's Moonlight, which lets you stream any PC game. The video quality isn't as good, but it plays about the same as far as I can tell. Moonlight requires a lot more setup and is a lot clunkier to use, but it's also free. All of this is free! And it uses games you already bought on hardware you already own. We can make our own Stadia with blackjack and hookers. Steam Remote Play even lets you stream local multiplayer games with friends, essentially adding friends-only online multiplayer to games that otherwise don't support it. Parsec is good for that too. All of this is free! I have to drive this point down your throat because it's incredible. And all of this has been a better experience than Luna. I know I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but I just have a hard time figuring out why I'd want to continue playing games through the cloud. Why invest my time and money into a service where I don't actually own anything? Alright, I think I've yelled at clouds for long enough. As for Amazon's other gaming escapades, they have their own game launcher. It's mainly just there for free games to get with an Amazon Prime subscription. That's all it really is. You can claim games you're technically already paying for if you have Prime, but the problem is that now you have to deal with this weird launcher that you don't use for anything else. I didn't try it out myself. It's just another launcher that you don't care about. I'm not wasting your time talking about it. Let's talk about the game engine they had instead. Basically, the idea behind Lumberyard was to have an easy way for developers to integrate Amazon Web Services into their games. You know, for servers and stuff like that. Plenty of games already do this, so having it built right into the engine does seem like a good idea. And it was completely free for games that didn't have any multiplayer, which seemed like an attractive offer back in like 2016, at least for about a year or so. That's when third-party engines started to become basically free, so don't bother using this thing. It's been discontinued, and the only notable game that used it that wasn't made by Amazon was Star Citizen of all things. It's been heavily modified into its own engine, so it's not even the same thing at this point. Lumberyard just kind of felt like an internal engine on Amazon. They felt like making public in hopes that people ended up using it. But I guess it's not all bad, since it was later forked into Open 3D Engine, which seems like a fine enough engine. I'm not sure why I'd use it over any of the other major engines, but I'm here today to make fun of giant corporations, not to pick on the little guys. This could be something cool in a few years. It's kind of surprising that more tech companies haven't tried to make a game engine. They have the money and resources, and there is a lot of money to be made off a good third-party engine. The real problem with this is probably just inexperience. Non-game developers don't know what goes into a game, so they don't know what needs to go into a game engine. Why even bother trying? Even Lumberyard is a fork of CryEngine. Plus, Unreal and Unity have been around for so long, their communities have already documented how to properly use them. It was an Unreal or Unity tutorial to get you started in making a game in basically any genre. Building up a new community around a game engine takes a while, and it isn't even guaranteed. Godot seems to be the only engine that won people over from Unity because they made something genuinely worth using, and Godot is free and open source, so there might not be as much money in it as there used to be, at least on the smaller indie scale. When it comes to making a AAA game engine, that's an insane undertaking by comparison, which is why there's only a few of them. If making a viable Unreal Engine alternative was easy, there'd be at least 20 of them by now. So I guess it actually makes sense why Amazon abandoned Lumberyard. Although they haven't quite abandoned their game publishing venture yet. Amazon Games is certainly a game publisher. They published an MMO or two that did alright, but they also published an extraction shooter called Crucible that only lasted 3 months. Like, dude, this is such a crazy rabbit hole. I felt like I was going insane looking through these games because this is one of the weirdest portfolios I've ever seen. Everyone knows who Amazon is, but their games have had so little cultural impact that most of them don't even have their own Wikipedia pages. Apparently they publish a game by Way Forward that's like Luigi's Mansion. Have you heard of Till Morning's Light? Because I haven't. It was a game for Amazon mobile devices, and I'm not sure if you can even buy it anymore. And then there's the Grand Tour game, a licensed game for a car show I've never heard of that was co-developed by Heavy Iron Studios. You know, the battle for Bikini Bottom people. They're still making games? What the hell? Heavy Iron also made the Pac-Man game that was one of the few Stadia exclusives. Like, what is going on over there? Game publishing is another thing that seems like an obvious thing to do when you're a company with lots of money. Just let the real game devs figure out how to make a product worth buying and watch the profits flow in. But again, it's not quite that simple. A lot of small devs have chosen to go independent because they're trying to move away from big companies. And you can't get more big name games because they already have connections to big publishers. Why go for a publisher that's tied to a big company that probably doesn't know what they're doing yet? That's like the worst of both worlds. So yeah, that was just about all the dirt I could find on Amazon, at least in terms of video games. They were actually the inspiration for this video. No matter how much they try to make it in the gaming industry, nothing they do works. At best, they've made 2 moderately successful MMOs. That's about it. You probably haven't heard much else about what they're trying to do in this industry. Amazon has not made a gaming splash. They've barely even made a ripple. It's just insane to me how you can have so much money and actually genuinely try to branch out into this, and they still can't figure out how to make a successful gaming product. They apparently have a few games still in development, like a Lord of the Rings MMO and a Tomb Raider game. But at this point, it wouldn't surprise me if they just give up a few years from now. Everything they touch seems doomed to just barely break even at best. It's not exactly good corporation business. The next order of business is Facebook, everyone's favorite place to never go because their parents think it's cool. Facebook is another company that the average person would be surprised is considered big tech. Aside from the obvious thing they make, they also make a lot of web and AI tools. React is one of the most popular ways to make a web app, and it's used in a lot of stuff you probably use. Like Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, Twitch, Discord, Reddit, there's too many to name. Also, React isn't very efficient, and there's been much better front-end frameworks in recent years, so a lot of the internet runs really poorly because of React, and we just kind of have to deal with it. But that's a different rant. Facebook's poured a lot of money into VR over the years. So what's their grand vision with all that research and development? The metaverse, which they call Horizon Worlds for some reason. I can't say that name very well, get used to it. It's actually kind of surprising how much I had to read into this before I knew what it was even called, which is definitely a bad sign. I thought it was actually just called the Metaverse. I thought they just ripped off Persona 5. No wonder barely anyone played this thing. The highest user count I could find was like 300,000. Like, for the amount of money that went into it, that is nothing. It's still online as of writing, and normally I would try it out for science, but I don't have a VR headset, and I'm not buying one just to experience a worse VR chat, because that's all it is. videos. All this talk about metaverse real estate and VR shopping, and I thought all this stuff was Facebook's doing. The metaverse outside of Horizon Worlds is definitely his own rabbit hole worth his own video that I'm probably not making, but Facebook's version has a lot less to talk about. You mainly just walk around and talk to people, with the occasional basic minigame that barely functions. Now, I would make fun of all the floating torsos and how bizarre and uncanny that is, but they actually did add legs at some point. When? Who knows? Finding information about this game past 2023 is shockingly hard. If you try to find videos about Horizon Worlds in 2025, it's a ghost town. It's only populated by people that have somehow been playing this for years. I mean, like, good for them for enjoying it, I guess, but it has this bizarre, awkward atmosphere that just rubs me the wrong way. I don't want to be here. Maybe because it's overrun with kids that are obviously too young to be playing this. I should reiterate that I didn't actually play this myself, so everything I've seen about this game has just been from a couple YouTube videos. But there's just something about Horizon Worlds that's just inherently uninteresting. It's trying to be its own Second Life, PlayStation Home, VR chat thing, but it doesn't even bother trying to do anything that made those other games appealing. Whatever engine tech they're using is unimpressive. It feels like all of this could have been made in Unity. While it does look a little better now, when people were talking about it, the game just looked like a prototype you make for a senior project, not a public release that you can actually spend real money on. And the worst part is the avatars. They just look uncanny. There's no style to them. The Mii's and Xbox avatars actually looked appealing. Anyone with eyes can see this. I don't even need to explain it. There are people out there drawing illicit fan art of one of the default Mii's they use in Smash Bros. Simply because she looks kinda cute. No one is drawing art of the Horizon avatars. And that's the difference between good character design and bad character design. The Horizon avatars just look soulless. I don't want to be one. I don't want to control one of these little guys. I don't even want to be associated with one. I'd rather just point and laugh at them from afar. And if Concord is anything to go by, if people don't click with the characters, they don't want to be in your world. I look at Horizon Worlds and see a game devoid of passion or charm. I'm not sure if the people designing this have even played a video game before. Plenty of people who criticize modern AAA games say that too many of them are designed by a committee to appeal to as many people as possible. But this feels like a case where it actually was designed by a committee. They saw what VR chat was doing and said, we can make that, and never bothered trying to figure out what made it appealing in the first place. It's just a shallow imitation of something vastly more successful, both artistically and financially. There's definitely the argument that Horizon Worlds is supposed to be a platform. It's probably what Facebook is saying this is. It isn't trying to be a video game. Well, it looks like a game and plays like a game, so for all intents and purposes, this is a video game. But for argument's sake, let's try viewing this as a platform. This isn't some weird social video game, this is something more akin to Discord or Zoom. What does it look like from that lens? Honestly, not much better. Why hold a business meeting in a place like this? It doesn't feel very professional. Using Zoom and Teams to hold meetings is way more straightforward and much quicker. You don't even necessarily need to set up a webcam, you can just have a group voice call. With Horizon, you have to set up a VR headset with controllers and also make sure everything is charged, and it just feels like a waste of time to use this to just conduct business. Like, imagine having to waste an extra 20 to 30 minutes every day just trying to set up a VR headset to attend your daily meeting that probably could have been an email. People outside of tech don't realize how horrible people are with technology. The average office worker doesn't actually know how Excel works. You really expect them to be able to figure out how to set up a VR headset and use it pretty much every day? No. Using a webcam or a microphone is just easier. Holding a meeting in VR is cool on paper, but it's just a waste of time and practice. And everyone knows that time is money. This isn't going to replace Discord as a hangout place either for the same reasons. If you're wanting the VC is so quick and easy, then anyone can do it. At least VR chat has this aura of weirdness that makes it a unique experience over a regular Discord call. You don't even need a VR headset to play it. Horizon Worlds doesn't have that. Everything feels so corporate and uninviting that no one would ever want to subject their friends to it. A tech company making games instead of traditional software sounds like a good idea. They have a lot of programmers, and game development is essentially programming at the end of the day. But Facebook perfectly shows why they're actually two different disciplines in practice. Horizon Worlds is what happens when you only have engineers. When you have no artistic vision. You need both kinds of skills to make a game great. The artists know how to make a game look appealing and how to make a game fun, and the engineers know how to make those ideas a reality. Everything in Horizon Worlds functions, but it looks so unappealing and unpolished that no one wants to be there. Nothing in this game requires any unique tech. You could probably make something like this in Unity in a couple months, because it actually was made in Unity. With all the money that was poured into this thing, I just assumed that it was made in its own engine. But no, it's literally just Unity. What? And because it was made in Unity, the coding of this game was actually the least important part. It's all the game design decisions that make it interesting. Something that they should have realized very early on. But they didn't, because they don't actually know what they're doing making a game. The best they can do is the basic beginner minigames and make to learn how Unity works. Any other company would have handed this off to an actual game developer, because they would quickly realize they don't have the talent to make a good video game. Video games aren't like traditional software. You can have absolutely zero budget, but still make something fun if you make the right decisions. Which means that if you keep pumping money into a game, there's no guarantee you're actually making the right creative decisions. If you keep pumping money into a Photoshop alternative, you'll get something comparable eventually. But if you're trying to make a Pokemon killer, well, get in line, pal. So it's no surprise that traditional software companies haven't really tried to make a video game. Games require artistic vision that these giant corporations just don't have. The generic and approachable corporate art aesthetic doesn't translate well to games. It's boring. Programming is actually one of the least important parts of the game, at least until you get to the AAA level. It's how we can have people like Yandere Dev and Pirate Software make games without knowing basic concepts you're learning a CS 101 course. It doesn't matter how well a game is coded if it isn't fun to play. So when you only have engineers, it's gonna be obvious. Most other companies have realized this and instead decided to make services around games, rather than making games themselves. Most of them haven't been very successful at that either, but they clearly understand that game development is hard. So they'd be better off taking a different approach to try and tap into the gaming market. Meanwhile, Mark Zuckerberg was so obsessed with the idea of a virtual world that they funneled billions into a worse VR chat. Now, I know that most of that money is R&D costs into making the VR headsets and not the game thing that uses it, but VR in general isn't doing that great either, so it's been kind of a waste no matter how you look at it. Look, if a new Half-Life game couldn't get people to buy a VR headset, I don't think anything will. I'll play Half-Life Alyx eventually. I just need to convince myself that spending $300 on one game is worth it. So yeah, it's obvious that Horizon Wolves and the metaverse in general is slowly dying because no one cares. It doesn't matter if Mark Zuckerberg has all the yes men in the world. They're going to eventually say no when it's obvious that it isn't going anywhere. I will never forgive Mark Zuckerberg for making a Battle Network virtual world look lame. We really live in a timeline where you can connect an oven to the internet, but we don't have sentient AI companions that can fight each other. I hate technology. Let's talk about something that's obviously big tech to most people. Apple. Despite having a duopoly in the mobile market along with Google, they can't figure out how to tap into the dedicated crowd. While they've made a few attempts, Apple's gaming side quests have been a lot more tame than everyone else's, mainly because they never really put that much effort into any of it. Let's start with the Apple Arcade. It's a subscription service that lets you play a bunch of games on your Apple devices. So for $7 a month or $50 a year, you get access to a bunch of ad-free mobile games and a few real games here and there. On the surface, it just seems like Game Pass for mobile games, but they did have exclusive games that appeal to the dedicated crowd. So it did feel like they were trying to appeal to that market to some extent. But the big problem with a service like this is that core video game enjoyers don't want to play games on their phone. They want to play games on console and PC. The mobile market and console market have completely different audiences. And for the few people that are willing to play games regardless of the device is on, one of two things happen. Either you put up popular games that people already bought on other platforms, or you put up new games that people don't want to pay a subscription fee to play. The latter scenario just kills all marketing momentum the game might have had. Sonic Dream Team shows that it doesn't matter if it's actually a good game. The core Sonic fan base never played it, so everyone forgot about it. Even if it does come to other platforms, now people just see it as a weird mobile game no one played. And Shantae and the Seven Sirens is like that too. This is just anecdotal, but I don't hear it talked about as much as the other games. I'm not sure if it's because it just happened to not click with people or something, but it felt like it just kind of came and went. This is even a game I wanted to play, but I never got around to it because I forgot about it. Apple Arcade games seem to have the epic exclusive effect. Big name games lose all their marketing hype by the time it comes to Steam, and the PC version doesn't make as much money as if they just release it on Steam at launch. People have such short attention spans, they'll just play something else if it's too inconvenient. Netflix is doing something similar to the exact same results. There's a shockingly decent amount of good games here for anyone with a Netflix subscription, but it just has the same problem. Doesn't matter how good the games are. Mobile players don't want to play console games, and core video game enjoyers don't want to play games on their phone. It's just as simple as a market mismatch. I use my phone to look at memes. I use my dedicated gaming devices to play games. You know, it's really funny how back in like 2010, big game publishers were worried that mobile games are going to make consoles not profitable anymore. But nowadays, they're two completely different audiences with little overlap. So it's no surprise that no one wanted to buy AAA games on iPhone. Yeah, you can play a few games like Resident Evil Village, Assassin's Creed Mirage, and Death Stranding on an iPhone. This isn't like when they tried doing this in the early days of iOS. This is the full-on PC version on an iPhone. And they launched them at nearly full price. It went about as well as you would expect. 350,000 people downloaded the free demo of Resident Evil 4 Remake, but the full game only sold around 7,000 copies after 6 months. And that was the most successful one as far as I know. Now they did lower the prices over time, but it was already too late. It just doesn't make any sense why you'd play the game this way. You're obviously not playing them with the touch control, so it already requires you to have another accessory to play it comfortably. Not to mention the poor performance for most people that don't have the best iPhone money can buy. If you can afford the iPhone 15 Pro the Digital Foundry is testing this on, you can easily afford a PS5. And the thing is, this isn't just companies porting these games to mobile to test the waters on whether or not they'd sell. This was made possible thanks to a game porting toolkit thing that Apple made that made porting from Mac to iPhone super easy. And while it's insane that mobile technology has come far enough to where this is playable, that doesn't mean that it's a good experience. Like, even Steam Deck can play the game better than this. Don't get me wrong, this kind of thing is super cool, but there's no way I'm actually playing the game like this. You know, I guess you could buy the game to play it on Mac instead, where you would actually have a good experience. Although at that point, I'd rather buy it on Steam. Wait, why is the Mac version of Resident Evil Village not on Steam? What? And now that I'm thinking about it, Apple owns around 15% of all desktop computers. Surely they can make money there, right? Well, that game porting toolkit I mentioned earlier also has a translation layer for running Windows games on Mac. Think how Steam Deck uses Proton to play Windows games on Linux. But just from looking at how you're supposed to use it, this clearly isn't meant to be a consumer product. It's a way for developers to port their games over to Mac, which is fine. But considering the current Mac gaming ecosystem, I'm not surprised that hardly any developers actually use this. Basically, a few years back, Apple dropped support for 32-bit apps on Mac, which means that most games don't work anymore. They also went all in on their own graphics API called Metal instead of adopting Vulkan. So if you make a game on Mac, you have to do a lot more work than you otherwise would for a pretty small user base. They screwed up gaming on Mac so badly that, according to the Steam hardware survey, there are more Linux users on Steam than Mac users. And in case you don't know what all this tech mumbo-jumbo means, just know that there aren't many games on Mac nowadays that you can play natively, and there isn't much you can do about it. There are third-party compatibility layers though. I've heard Crossover is the better one, but it costs about 75 bucks. The free one is called Whiskey, which is no longer maintained. Like, there's something ironic about this big title text that says, "Join the Mac gaming revolution." And then there's a little banner at the bottom that says, actually, never mind, we lost. Which really sets the mood for this whole situation. I don't have a Mac, so I have no idea how well any of this stuff works. There isn't nearly as much information about it as Proton. And I think that's because the gaming audience just isn't looking to play games on Mac. Building a PC is usually cheaper than a pre-built one. And people usually put Windows on it, where games already work because they're supposed to play on Windows. I'm all for people using their current hardware to its fullest potential, but if you only have a Mac and want to get into PC gaming, just get a Windows PC, or a Steam Deck, or anything else really. It's easier. I've seen those new Mac prices. You can afford a second computer. This video is going on for a lot longer than I was expecting it to, so let's wrap this up with the opposite of Apple. Microsoft. Wait, we all know about Xbox. I thought this was about the failed attempts. So yeah, I don't need to explain to you what an Xbox is. Most people my age have fond memories of getting called slurs over Xbox Live. Microsoft really have made a name for themselves in the industry, being one of the 3 pillars of the console market. Xbox could have been the success story about how to properly get into the gaming industry. But even the most successful company I'm talking about today screwed it up eventually. If you've been keeping up with the industry at all in recent years, Xbox just can't figure out how to sell consoles. They've been laying off so many people that I really have to question why they bother buying up so many developers in the first place. Which may sound surprising to anyone outside of the gaming sphere, but it's so not surprising to anyone following this stuff. And when you think about it, it makes sense. When was the last time they made a system actually worth owning? The Xbox 360. And even that success seems like a freak accident in hindsight. It was the perfect storm of Xbox having Halo and Gears of War, and PS3 being too hard to develop for and too expensive at launch. And they did it with a launch failure rate of like 55%. If any console died that often today, you wouldn't be able to recover from it. That's how good of a console the 360 was. People put up with red rings of death to keep playing it. But then you get to the Xbox One, and Xbox's reputation did a complete 180. This thing launched with a higher price than PS4 because they bundled the Kinect with it, and it didn't have any worthwhile exclusives. I mean, PS4 didn't either at the time, but at least it was cheaper and had mostly the same games. Infamous Second Son was pretty good though. It also wasn't clear to a lot of people about whether or not you could play used games. Basically, they were trying to put more DRM on discs to try and prevent secondhand sales, which also means you essentially didn't own the disc that you bought. This was reversed before launch, but it definitely turned a lot of people off of Xbox One. Xbox One's biggest problem is that it just didn't have any must-play games. I've heard Halo 5 sucks, the newer Gears of War games are apparently just okay, and anything else worth playing was also on PC. Starfield was more or less the make or break point for Series X to give it some kind of meaningful exclusive. But then most people bought the game on PC. And it makes you realize they really just bought up Studio infamous for making games that need mods to work properly, and they expected people to buy the game on console instead. So people saw all these games coming to Xbox and PC and didn't think, wow, I need to buy an Xbox. They thought, damn, I need a better PC. And I know that not everyone wants to mess with PC gaming. Consoles are obviously always going to have their place, but the sheer popularity of the PC market shows that this isn't actually a problem in practice. Games exclusive to Xbox just don't have the same impact as they do on PC. When the Master Chief Collection came out on Xbox One, it felt like no one really cared. Obviously, people bought it and played it, but I guess most people with an Xbox already played these games, so there wasn't a big reason to freak out over it. Although I suppose that the broken multiplayer at launch didn't help. It was a great way to play the single player at least. But when it came to PC, it felt like damn near everyone was playing Halo again. When PlayStation games come to PC, they seem to sell well, but it doesn't have the same energy of, oh thank God, I don't need an Xbox to play this anymore. Every time an Xbox game is on PC, everyone I know buys it on PC. A Starfield, Oblivion Remastered, Hi-Fi Rush, Doom the Dark Ages, Halo Infinite. Like, all of these games just seem to do better on PC than Xbox. Most of these games are even on PlayStation now. Xbox shows what happens when a console doesn't have any exclusives. People just buy the other consoles instead. Because why would I buy an Xbox to play Oblivion Remastered when PlayStation also has it, plus Spider-Man, Ghost of Tsushima, Astrobot, etc.? In a perfect world, games should be released on every platform where it's feasible, but console exclusives seem like a necessary evil to get people into your ecosystem. I don't like it, but it is what it is. You can't even make the argument that Xbox is still around to sell Game Pass subscriptions, because Game Pass doesn't make money either. Well, Game Pass did just make about $5 billion in revenue, but that's revenue, not profit. Game Pass apparently makes a profit, but they won't tell us how much, so it probably just barely breaks even. Which, for big corporations like this, might as well be the same thing as losing money. The worst part about the current state of Xbox is that the management can't seem to figure out what they're doing wrong. In an interview with Kinda Funny Games, Phil Spencer, the CEO of Microsoft Gaming, his real title, said this:
but we are not in a position, and I see it out there, I see commentary that if you just build great games, everything would turn around. It's just not true that if we go off and build great games, all of a sudden you're going to see console share shift in some dramatic way. We lost the worst generation to lose in the Xbox One generation, where everybody built their digital library of games. There is no world where Starfield's an 11 out of 10 and people start selling their PS5s. That's not going to happen.
What he said is true to an extent. Obviously, people aren't going to drop everything to sell their current console to buy an Xbox if Starfield was an 11 out of 10. But if Starfield really was that good, people would have bought an Xbox and play it. Especially for other exclusives like Redfall, Halo Infinite, and Avowed were also 11 out of 10 must-play games. Starfield is a game that's so bland that even the modding scene stopped caring about it. If even the most dedicated of Bethesda fans think it sucks, maybe it just sucks. And I know people would buy an Xbox if there was something worthwhile on it. Because when I bought a Switch, I had to completely restart my library. And yet it was the console I bought the most games for by far. Because Switch has an insane library of games. Nintendo went from being a laughingstock during the Wii U days to being the one on top in just one generation. The Switch contradicts most of what he's saying during this part of the interview while he was saying it. And funnily enough, Xbox has the same problem the Wii U had. Its name. What does Series X even mean? Not to mention that it sounds really similar to the cheaper Series S, which is digital only and less powerful. And Series X is also similar to Xbox One X, which is the pro version of Xbox One. Xbox One X also abbreviates to Xbox. Or just Zox or XOX, depending on your school of thought. But now it just sounds like a porn site. I know the differences between all these stupid names, and even I get them mixed up a lot. Xbox 360 to 720 to 1080 would definitely be a weird naming scheme, but at least it makes sense. Bigger number means new console. What we have here doesn't instantly tell you what it is. Xbox One as an all-in-one system makes sense when you think about it. But what do we call the first Xbox now? OG Xbox, Xbox Classic, Xbox One, Xbox Zero? I shouldn't need a degree in mental gymnastics to figure out which product is which. If a certified video game enjoyer like myself doesn't know what to call these things half the time, the average person just buying this for their kid won't know what's going on either. PlayStation 5 is bigger than PlayStation 4. Makes sense to me. I told my mom about Switch 2 and she instantly understood what it was. Super Switch would have been a cool name, but Nintendo learned their lesson with Wii U. Switch 2 was called Switch 2 to make it brutally obvious what this thing is. People are stupid, and if people actually knew which Xbox is which, it probably would have done better, even if only a little. It's just bad marketing either way. But these people came up with the "this is an Xbox" campaign, so it wouldn't surprise me if the Wii U marketing team just moved on to Xbox. Honestly, the current reputation of Xbox is so down the toilet that I question if there's even gonna be another one. They say they're still making another Xbox, but whether it's a traditional console or some weird PC thing, who knows? They could even just cancel it at any point and I wouldn't be surprised. Their Xbox ally might be testing the waters for whether a PC box is a viable way to differentiate themselves. Having a good Steam Deck alternative would be great, but if it actually launches at $550 for the cheapest model, then you may as well just buy a Steam Deck LCD. That's too expensive for the entry-level device. The theoretical benefits of a stripped-down Windows doesn't mean much when a proven, cheaper equivalent already exists. We're kind of in a Schrodinger's Xbox situation until they actually unveil their brand new 10th gen system. Does Xbox 5 exist? Until they tell us the answer, who knows? Wait, the next consoles are supposed to come out in 2027? It feels like this generation's barely even started. Look, I'm all for more competition. Lord knows the console market needs it, but there's just no reason to buy an Xbox anymore. Everyone went with PlayStation instead. Well, that was all of Big Tech's failed attempts to get into the gaming industry. At least from what I could find. I guess the only surefire way to break into the gaming industry is to just make a good game that people want to play. Who knew? This was actually going to be a video on the second channel, but I just kept looking into it more and more until it ballooned into this. I really did try to find some deep cuts, but it turns out that when you're a big company, you kind of have to market your product to make sure people know about it. I didn't manage to find anything that I didn't know about before starting this. Some of this stuff is fun to look into, though. I figured that Horizon Wolves being a VR chat clone was just a joke, but no, that's really all it is. No wonder they're pumping trillions into AI instead. Video games aren't working out for them, so what else are they supposed to do? There's been so little technological advancement in the last 5 years, they're probably running out of ideas. Maybe ask the AI for help, I don't know. I'm sure these board members would love a glue pizza party while they play a couple rounds of Luna Fortnite. Look, that's all I got for today. I'm actually doing the Pokemon Emerald video now. So, it's been fun. Take care, everyone.